Somewhere between I'd die for you and I'd kill for you stands a certain kind of romantic icon. At the intersection of devotion and delusion, we find the ultimate romantic hero, the obsessed simp. What unites women across cultures and romance preferences is their love for pathetic, obsessive fictional men. In real life, simping is frowned upon, mostly by men, of course, but in romance, pathetic men are kings, bowing to their queens. Well, sort of. Terms and conditions apply. These romantic heroes are clearly not well and not coping. And it makes sense. In many stories across time and culture, love has been portrayed as a sickness, an unhealthy obsession, a brief descent into madness. These stories were told as reflections, as tragedies or cautionary tales. Today, though, stories about love have become a business, and they tend to cater to specific consumer fantasies. And within those fantasies, obsessive love isn't a tragedy. It's a fun scenario with an optimistic resolution. Obsession haunts love stories written for women, but also those written by and for men. In the West, it's been around since at least the 19th century, with dangerous hero archetypes like Heathcliff from Wuthering Heights. In the East, it's just as prevalent. Anime harems often include at least one yandere girl, cute but deadly, widely jealous and obsessively protective of the guy she loves. And when it comes to media made for women, yandere men are everywhere, so much that they have entire subreddits devoted to them. So what is it about obsession that keeps haunting our stories about love? Well, suppose obsession is a kind of fantasy. Illouz argues, and it's an argument I've discussed before, that fantasy, especially the kind we enjoy engaging with, does two very therapeutic things. First, it formulates our fears and anxieties. Then it gives them a happy ending, or at least some kind of emotionally satisfying resolution. So, if we want to understand our fascination with obsessive love, we should ask two questions. What's so scary about obsessive love, and what's so pleasurable about the kind of resolution it usually gets in stories? The first question is kind of obvious. Of course, obsessive love is scary. First of all, it's frightening for the person who is obsessed, because this kind of all-consuming passion necessarily involves the loss of self-possession. Love is irrational, it makes no sense and, according to legend, drives people to do foolish, self-destructive things. Obsession is scary because it means losing control. You're no longer a person of your own, you now belong to someone else, and they have power over you. However, there is a contradiction there. Obsessive love is also dangerous for the person being loved. It's a red flag. It's clearly unhealthy. Obsessive lovers are controlling, intrusive. Their love is all-consuming, and for the person being loved, it feels more like they are the ones being consumed. In one of my favorite otome games, there is a female side character who's happy to go to prison because at least prison will protect her from her stalker. At least there she can be finally free of him. You see, we have two contradictory ideas, two contradictory anxieties, because really we're afraid of both. We fear falling obsessively in love with someone because we'll lose control, but we also fear someone else falling obsessively in love with us because we'll still lose control. In both cases, it feels like the other person is in charge. So if loving means surrendering yourself to another person, then being loved should feel empowering. But it often doesn't. It still feels like losing control. And that doesn't make any sense, does it? So how is it that we've ended up with two contradictory ideas about love, both of which make it feel suffocating for everyone involved? And more importantly, if that's what makes us anxious, then why are we obsessed with stories about obsessive love? What is it about them that makes them somehow soothing? Chapter 1. Narcissism. Obsessive love is fascinating in its extremity. How can love become so warped that you forget all reason? Well, maybe that's just what love is. For centuries, people across different cultures have told stories that describe love as a kind of obsession. Plato famously called it divine madness. An old Persian legend gives us Majnun, whose love was so intense, he literally went mad. Anthropological studies have found evidence of romantic obsession in at least 88% of cultures. Intense feelings have often been described as lovesickness. And as it turns out, obsessive love might actually be a sickness. While what's called OLD, obsessive love disorder, hasn't been officially recognized as a psychiatric disorder, the phenomenon of obsessive love has been studied extensively. In 1979, psychologist Dorothy Tame coined the term limerence to describe an unstable, obsessive state of passionate desire. One of Tame's interviews put it this way: "I dropped out of 3 of my 5 classes because I was spending hours every day lying on my bed thinking about her. It was all I wanted to do, just lie around, think about her, and try to figure out ways to get her back." Or, as described in certain emo-ish stalker romance, "She's under my skin, running through my veins, squeezing my heart until I'm weak. When I'm not near her, I physically ache. It's not a choice anymore, I have to be with her." Limerence is the state of being in love. In fact, I'm surprised that the English language didn't have a separate word for it before, like other languages do. Limerence is marked by obsessive thoughts, idealization of the limerent object, longing so intense it feels like physical pain, and an overwhelming craving for reciprocation. And limerence is a lot more common than we think. As Tame said, it's a type of suffering that's both extreme and banal. Tune in to any radio station and most songs will be about limerence. Romance stories are all about limerence. It's all over pop culture. Limerence is experienced by people of all ages and genders, and limerent people are usually met with a mix of sympathy and annoyance. Can they just get a grip or something? Limerence is embarrassing. It's pathetic. It's a humiliating loss of control, and any rational, self-sufficient person should always be in control. Rationality is the greatest Western value. We cannot allow ourselves to be irrational. That is frowned upon. We can't be out of control. We're told we shouldn't even talk about something as silly as feelings of love because it's banal, it's sentimental. But we can't help it. The feelings and the suffering seem to just spill out on their own. Men are especially expected to be rational and always in control of themselves. That's why limerent men are called pathetic, made fun of, mocked as simps. Because how dare they think so much about another person, especially a mere woman? Unless, of course, he's a character in a romance novel, where all the hottest male leads are simps. Because reading about men who go through these extreme yet utterly familiar feelings is just fun. At least in romance stories, men are allowed to go mad in like a safe for the reader way and be, fun. Especially because we know that romance men can't actually hurt us. Or the heroine. There are 2 problems with limerence, though. First is that limerence is a condition of cognitive obsession. It's a temporary state, so it eventually passes. If mutuality is achieved, it eventually evolves into deeper feelings of love. But if not, it's either replaced by a new limerent attachment to someone else, or you can just remain in the state of limerence forever. Which is why Dante Alighieri remained devoted to his beloved Beatrice for his entire life. Although some say that his love for her also evolved, from youthful infatuation into a vision of ideal spiritual love that surpasses earthly passion. But idealization is also, let's say, a symptom of limerence. While you are in love, you kind of see your beloved through rose-tinted glasses. You emotionally magnify the traits you find charming and ignore everything else, like their flaws. Tame called this crystallization, borrowing from a metaphor by Stendhal that he used to describe his passionate love. He compared it to tossing a twig into a salt mine and leaving it there for months. It remains a twig, but the salt transforms it into an object of shimmering beauty. In other words, your passionate love is the salt. It turns a simple twig into a radiant jewel. Freud, who had his own ideas about love, which Tame disagreed with, described a somewhat similar process of idealization. He argued that people are kind of predisposed to loving certain kinds of people, that a person decides on their ideal before they happen to meet someone who matches it. You know what you admire in people way before you meet people who have the traits that you admire. Freud called this process identification because you identify with your ideal. What you find admirable in others says something about you. Sometimes it's even a reflection of your own idealized self-image. And because it's Freud, according to him, the first object of that idealized identification is, of course, Daddy, because Mommy loves you and she cares for you, but she also loves Daddy because perhaps she loves him even more. But Daddy is never there, and he's cool and mysterious and absent and cool. He is the ideal you can never reach, so his love is something you long for and will never receive. Supposedly, it's Freud. So identification coincides with the object of desire through a kind of insertion of the object into the ego, or translated into human, love, or more precisely limerence, happens when you merge the ideal in your head with an actual person. You have this image in your head, like kind and witty, likes video games just as much as I do, and then you meet someone who seems to fit. But the idealized version of them only exists in your mind. You project that image onto the person. Because of this, Freud argued that love is inherently narcissistic. As Kristeva puts it, the lover is a narcissist with an object. Love is narcissistic because it's your ideal that you selfishly project onto the other person. The lover sees the object of their love through the rose-tinted glasses of their own narcissism, since that ideal tells us more about the lover than the beloved. The problem is that even though you merge your ideal with a real person, that person is still a separate human being. They don't exist to fulfill your fantasy, so they're always slightly out of reach. And that distance, that out of reachness, is part of the appeal, because when someone is within reach, you start seeing them for what they really are. The illusion breaks. MADK is a perfect example of why the object of our idealized love can never be truly grasped. Its main character is obsessively in love and desperate to possess the object of his love, to make him his, to close the gap between himself and his ideal. But his story is ultimately tragic. It shows how we project idealized reflections onto those we love, only to become those same ideals for others, trapped in the cycle of narcissistic desire, longing to possess what cannot be possessed and left alone in the end. To me, the people who developed a limerent attachment to me always seemed odd. It felt like they were watching a film with me in their head, where I was the main actress, but it also wasn't me. They'd fixate on things I found insignificant, like my appearance, and ignore things I actually valued about myself. It felt strange, like being molded into a character I didn't recognize. As the protagonist from Carmilla says to the woman who is obsessed with her, I remind you perhaps of someone whom you love, but you must not. I hate it. I don't know you. I don't know myself when you look so and talk so. So maybe that's why people say that love is a doomed cause. Obsessive limerent attachments are so often one-sided because it's really about the psyche of the obsessed person, not the reality of the person they are obsessed with. The object of their love is in many ways fictional, just a figment of their imagination. And fiction, of course, could also be described as crystallized, emotionally reframed version of reality. Today, stories about obsessive love have become entertainment. Not all of them attempt to explore the dark corners of romantic obsession. Stories reshape events and feelings into something more dramatic and beautiful, so that we, the audience, have fun. Dark parts exist so that the characters can overcome them. Traits are exaggerated, flaws minimized. Characters are essentialized, idealized versions of people, and so are their relationships and their feelings. In these stories, everyone is hot. The main character, their love interest, their friends' parents, the parents' dogs. Everyone is described as hot as hell and in control, even when they're not supposed to be. Take Haunting Adeline, which is not a book I would recommend for a variety of reasons, but it seems to have become the blueprint for all the other stalker romances. And the stalker there is first of all absurdly confident. The minute I properly introduce myself to Adeline Riley, she won't be able to think of anyone else. Just where does he get that confidence? From the author, obviously. But here's the thing, he's not a simp, or rather he is, but he's a hot simp. He's obsessed with Adeline. He thinks about her all the time. He's textbook limerent, and yet he's in control. He's confident, he's powerful, and second of all, he's absolutely perfect. He has a perfect body, he has a perfect soul. Well, That's debatable. But he's like an extremely talented hacker with a six-pack, and he's great in bed. That's also debatable. Those were some really cringy scenes. I wish I could forget them. He's pathetic, he's a simp, but he's also an ideal. So is George from Lights Off. So is Kirishima from Yakuza Fiancé, and any other yandere male character from Asian novels or comics. He's a and he's the character that readers identify with, even if they are not male. We read across genders. More than 100 years ago, Catherine said, "I am Heathcliff," for a reason. We are Heathcliff. We are the hero. We are the simp. But in fiction, the limerent person, the simp, becomes a figure of power. He's not like us, virtually helpless in the face of our own attachments. No. He has a plan. And that's exactly why it feels so refreshing to be inside his head, especially if you're a woman who's spent her whole life being told to wait daintily for Prince Charming to come sweep her off her feet. So for now, the only way we can imagine having this kind of agency, confidence and control over winning someone's heart is by imagining ourselves in the head of an obsessive man. A limerent person is supposed to be pathetic, but that's not the word anyone would use to describe a yandere. They're not pitiful. They're intense, focused, deserving. The yandere fantasy is a power fantasy, a fantasy of mastering the fear and uncertainty of unrequited life. A fantasy of mastering the fear and uncertainty of unrequited love. "I will make you mine," he says, and we believe him. Maybe you're a creep, but if you're a hot creep, maybe that's fine. And the fantasy is pleasurable precisely because reality doesn't work that way. There is no foolproof way to spark a limerent response in someone else. Obsession is supposed to be about losing control, but in fiction it becomes a fantasy of gaining it. The fantasy of obsessive love isn't about vulnerability, it's about power. The power to control the one thing you're not supposed to be able to control. Someone else's feelings, especially when they seem to have total control over yours. Chapter 2. Care. But of course, uncontrollable obsession isn't just a problem for the person who's obsessed. It's an even bigger problem for the person who is being obsessed over. Because if obsessive love is narcissistic, then the beloved is essentially trapped inside someone else's narcissism. Not being able to control your own feelings is a valid anxiety, but being the object of someone else's obsessive feelings? That's a real fear. And even though we might spend half of the story inside the head of a man who's perfect and in control, we spend the other half inside the mind of someone who is clearly in a very vulnerable position. Real-life stalking is no joke. Real-life stalkers destroy people's lives. And even if they don't, they are just scary. I was once told by a guy who was apparently trying to woo me that he would find out where I live and rape me. It wasn't funny at all. So why are so many readers drawn to stories where a male character is obsessed with his love interest, when in real life that's terrifying? Well, if you've seen any of my other videos, you probably know what I'm going to say. First, fiction is a safe space to experience scary things. And second, in fiction, those scary things can become fun. In the case of obsessive love, the heroine's powerlessness is at least partly transformed into power. This, of course, baffles some more critical readers. Why are stalker romances trying to frame such scary situations as if the heroine is secretly in control, when clearly she's not? Well, because that's the fantasy, the idea that she's secretly in control of the man who's visibly in control of everything else. Because according to the myths women are raised with, that's where our power is supposed to lie. I was told growing up that I had to become someone captivating enough to move the hand of a man, that my power was in seduction and my ability to influence and control him. I always found it strange. That meant I had no power of my own. that I could only act by influencing those who actually had the power to change the world. And that's exactly how obsessive love stories frame love, as a realm where the woman holds secret power and the man exists only to serve her. Haunting Adeline is told in dual point of view. The stalker is called the Shadow. His victim, she's called, surprise, surprise, the manipulator, as if she's the one secretly pulling the strings, not him. Love then becomes not only a realm of control, but also the primary metric of worth. Women are taught to value themselves only insofar as they are desired by men. We are taught from a young age that the purpose of a woman's life is to love and be loved. Everyone knows what the female complaint is. Women live for love, and love is the gift that keeps on taking. Being loved isn't an innocent wish. It's a requirement for being a worthy person. You need to be so good and hot and beautiful that men will be obsessed with you. That's how you prove your value to the world. You need to be so good that a certain Mr. Right, or in our case Mr. Wrong, will lose his mind over you. But romantic love in general is more than just a fairy tale sold to women. As Illouz argues, in an age where religion isn't as relevant as it used to be, when people have largely lost a sense of cosmic meaning, it's romance that's taken its place. As institutional religion faded, romantic love absorbed its emotional and symbolic function. Romance replaced religion as the focus of daily life. Instead of scripture, we have love stories that assure us that love will conquer all, instead of rituals, consumerist practices. Love has become the new mysterious force we all pray to, one of the most important mythologies of our time, a modern utopia. Aren't we told it can solve all our problems? Romantic relationships have become the new site of devotion, the spiritual and emotional center of modern life. Lovers, now the devotees of this new religion, are supposed to worship one another, to turn each other into deities worthy of unconditional love. If romantic love replaces religion, then your lover becomes your god. It's a fitting metaphor for the limerent person, but a god is not just an object of admiration. God is also a benevolent patriarch. He, because for some reason it's always a he, watches over you, makes things right, punishes you if you've been bad. He's the ultimate hot daddy who also loves you. As a certain legendary character once said,
"There's nobody hotter than God."
Okay, maybe God is taking it a bit too far, although the obsessed male leads in these stories are basically perfect, and some of these texts do take generous liberties with religious references. But there is another mythological figure that fits even better: the guardian angel. Belief in guardian angels, benevolent spiritual entities who protect or guide individuals, is found in many cultures and religions around the world. These guardian figures might have different names and appearances depending on context, but their core roles are the same: to protect you from harm, guide you toward the right path, or exact divine punishment on those who have wronged you. The belief that someone is watching over you, especially in solitude or danger, offers psychological comfort. And, well, guardian angels are basically stalkers. Sure, in most traditions, they are messengers from God with no personal interest in your character. But aside from that, they're perfect stalkers, and vice versa. The stalker in obsessive romance stories functions like a guardian angel. He watches over you. He gives you unconditional attention and love. He sends you food. He makes sure you've eaten. He takes care of you. He wants only the best for you. He punishes the people who've hurt you. He presents you with the skin of the person who has saved you. How romantic. Wouldn't it be nice to become the center of someone's universe, to be the most important person in their life, to have them think of you and only you, especially when that someone is godlike and perfect in every way? It almost feels like if someone like that loves you passionately, then maybe your life actually amounts to something. Maybe you're worthy of that kind of love, right? It sounds like a narcissistic fantasy, but maybe it's more like the yearning of an unloved child, the deep craving to be loved and cherished completely. Because it's children who expect unconditional love from their caretakers, who expect to be the center of the universe. And that is a very natural, very healthy desire, especially for those who don't get the love and care they need, especially for women. Bell Hooks argues in her book All About Love that we are living through an epidemic of lovelessness. Many of us grew up in dysfunctional families without ever being taught what real love looks like or what to expect from a healthy relationship. Women, however, are taught how to care for others, how to anticipate the needs of those around them, how to do the emotional labor that keeps our societies functioning. It's rooted in sexist stereotypes, but women are encouraged to develop an interest in love, to learn how to love and how to care. Men, on the other hand, are taught that caring is women's work. Some never learn how to care for others at all. They are used to receiving love and care from women, not giving it. In many heterosexual couples, women do the emotional work for both of them, which is why for so many women the ideal of a man who unconditionally cares for her, who anticipates her every need, is an impossible fantasy. Obsessive male leads do exactly that. They pay attention to their beloved's moods, their likes and dislikes. They remember birthdays, anniversaries, the little things. They are total creeps, but because of that, they notice everything. While many real-life men have been taught that paying attention is mission impossible. In fact, popular self-help books on love and relationships still insist that men and women are just inherently different, and suggest that women should give up on wanting men to be more caring. They argue that caring just comes more naturally to women, but of course that's not true. Women aren't better at love, we've just been taught to practice it. The heroine of Lights Out is a nurse. She spends her days caring for others and saving lives, working overtime until she's completely exhausted. Her guardian angel/stalker becomes her perfect caretaker. He brings her food, picks her up after shifts, makes sure she eats and rests. For once, she's the one being taken care of. Other times, it's the obsessed person who gets taken care of for the first time in their life. And that's why they are obsessed in the first place. Yandere is a power fantasy, but one with dark undertones, because many of these male characters are clearly traumatized, sometimes even emotionally crippled, by the immense pressure to be badass and unfeeling, the pressure patriarchy puts on them. In both cases, the genuine love these characters experience can be deeply healing, for them and for the reader. The central objective of any love story is the union of two characters, and in obsessive love stories we relate to the struggle of both. One is the limerent person, anxiously in love, fixated on someone else's every need. The other is the unloved, secretly needy person who longs to be cherished unconditionally. Both of these characters reflect the reader. They split the reader's needs and cravings in two. Because limerent connections are scary and so often unrequited, we crave control. On the one hand, we want to be the stalker, the one with the plan, the one who knows exactly how to get what they want. On the other, we want to be loved, madly, wholly, unconditionally. We want to be the center of someone else's universe. The pleasure point of obsessive love fantasies, the one where it all goes right, is that these two roles actually unite in the end. But they are characters, not real people. Maybe what they really represent is the fractured psyche of the author, and then the reader, split in two and stitched back together. In that sense, obsessive love stories are like a one-person role play, a two-character spectacle where both roles are played by the same person, and in the end, those roles merge. In real life, that kind of healing is often impossible. Two broken people don't just fix each other without also making each other worse. In the condition called love, Hananoi slowly rehabilitates from selfishly craving love and even demanding it from being a selfish narcissist to becoming a genuinely caring person who respects boundaries. But he's able to do that because he has a caring, supportive environment. Many people in real life don't have that. The world is full of needy, crying children trapped in adult bodies, longing to be taken care of. But since so few are willing to take the parenting role, even temporarily, many end up helplessly alone for the rest of their lives. I definitely know a few. But as Bell Hooks reminds us, real love is not a feeling, it's an act. Often it's an act of caring. In real life, people often confuse cathexis with love. When we feel deeply drawn to someone, we cathect with them. That is, we invest feelings or emotion in them. That process of investment, wherein a loved one becomes important to us, is called cathexis. Most of us confuse cathecting with loving. We all know how often individuals feeling connected to someone through the process of cathecting insist that they love the other person, even if they are hurting or neglecting them. Since their feeling is that of cathexis, they insist that what they feel is love. But we cannot claim to love if we are hurtful and abusive. Love and abuse cannot coexist. Love and abuse cannot coexist. Abuse and neglect are the opposites of love. Often we hear of a man who beats his children and wife and then goes on to the corner bar and passionately proclaims how much he loves them. If you talk to the wife on a good day, she may also insist that he loves her despite his violence. One of the worst sayings that we have in Russia is "Бьет, значит любит." If he beats you, it means he loves you. Maybe we need this definition of love that makes abuse acceptable, because otherwise we would have to face the fact that many of our relationships are in fact abusive and unloving. It's not about the intensity of your emotions, it's about the genuine interest in another person's emotional and mental well-being. In real life, obsessive lovers aren't guardian angels, they're wardens. They claim to love unconditionally, but really they mold their lovers to be what they want them to be. In real life, obsessive love doesn't lead to happy endings because real love involves two people, not just one dreaming reader. Real-life love is tainted by real trauma, and sometimes it simply can't hold up under all that weight. Real-world love is something we're all still learning. Thank you for listening.